Hello and welcome to the ESOL and Florida College and Career Readiness Standards Workshop Part 1. My name is Roxana Hurtado and I'm your facilitator today, and we will get started with reviewing our objectives for today's workshop. So first we plan to examine the changes in the Advanced ESOL standards and review that with you. We will also look at the college and career reading and writing standards. We will look into the instructional implications for teachers who teach Advanced ESOL, and we'll have a chance to look at some resources that will help you as instructors in the areas of reading and writing as we move into and transition into the college and career readiness standards. So before we dive into the standards itself, wanted to really have us reflect a little bit about what are the goals, what is it that we want our students to be able to get out of our ESOL programs. And this is a question for you to reflect on, is what academic knowledge and skills are you expecting your ESOL students to possess upon completion of your ESOL program? And of course, there'll probably be a variety of different responses or thoughts, but it is always important to think about these 4 areas, especially in the areas of reading, writing, speaking and listening, and in language. And the reason for that is that's the way the standards are put together, and that's the way as teachers of ESOL we need to start thinking about what are those specific skills and knowledge that we want our students to possess. As we're moving, and this is a national reform in the area of education, especially in adult education, this is a quote that I think suits very much the time that we're in adult education. The adult education system cannot stand still while the world around us is changing. And we're living in a time when there's a lot of changes in the area of technology, a lot of new expectations coming from the USDOE, new standards that are coming into adult education. So it is up to us to really keep abreast of all these changes that are going to impact not only ourselves as teachers, but our students in the classroom. So we'll begin by looking at, and it's important, this document are the curriculum frameworks for the College and Career Readiness Standards for Advanced ESOL. There will be more changes coming ahead. The ESOL committee will be working on those and will be released once they are ready. But at the moment, this is the curriculum framework that can be found on the FLDOE website. There is the link, and it gives you a lot of specific information as far as the standards. And one of the goals of today is to really look at the reading and the writing. And then the listening, speaking, and language will be part of the Part 2 workshop. So when we're looking at the college and career readiness standards, one of the big changes that is going to be coming in with the standards is the academic language. A lot of the expectations that are coming into adult ed is that we are putting together material and resources that increase the skills and knowledge base of our students, whether they go into the workplace in a vocational program or whether they pursue post-secondary education. So one of the big changes is in the area of language or vocabulary. And the new standards talk a lot about the use of academic language. And on the slide you'll see that what they mean by academic language. For example, using the word respond instead of using the word answer, or complete instead of finish, or discuss instead of and a couple of others. And with the standards, our students are going to be required or expected to be able to restate, summarize, or paraphrase what their classmates are saying. They'll be required to cite evidence from text, both fiction and nonfiction texts, and they'll be required to support their opinions in writing with facts from what they've read. So this is where adult education, and especially the expectations for English language learners, is headed. Um, so what are the college and career readiness standards? Well, they're research and evidence-based. They're aligned to both college and work expectations. It includes, and it's a very key word, rigorous content, and it's more rigorous than our students have been exposed to or have been required to be engaged in. It is intended to build upon the strengths of the students and the current curriculum that is currently in place. And it is also, ultimately, the goal is to have all students to be prepared for the global economy when they go out into the workforce or they want to pursue further their education. Just like it's important for us to know what the CCR standards or the college and career ready standards are, it's important that we understand what they are not. It's not a national or federal curriculum. It's not a mandated one. It doesn't indicate a hierarchy of one standard being more important than another. It doesn't dictate how instructors should teach. It does not completely address the support needed for English language learners, and so that is something that our state committee is looking into and trying to bring into as they are developing more structure to these standards for us in Florida. And it does not provide an exhaustive list of what skills should be taught and what content should be covered. So it's important for teachers to be aware of this as well. So now let's take a look at the standards itself, start beginning looking at all of the standards. One of the documents that's important for all adult educators as we're transitioning into the college and career readiness standards to be aware of is the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education. And this publication was put out a couple of years ago, and it pretty much highlights some of the emphasis why on higher skills and what are those standards, what's so important about these standards that would be applicable to adult ed. And of course, in the first bullet, it's important for the critical knowledge and skills that students have as they enter the workforce. It is the ability for students to be able to perform complex tasks. Also, the opportunity for students to acquire more advanced skills. And these hopefully are things that we're going to begin to embed or extend more into our ESOL programs. And as we're going through these slides in this workshop, it's important to keep in mind and reflect about your own program moving forward. In addition, what are the demands on our students? Well, they'll be required to be more analytical and asked to engage in more reasoning skills. And the second bullet on this particular slide is very important. They must have, or it's expected that they have more strong oral and written skills. Writing is going to play a bigger role in the standards, and this is what we need to be thinking about as we transition into the College of Career Readiness standards. So when we're looking at our ESOL program, we pretty much, of course, we begin with our foundations all the way up to the advanced, and that's what's in red, the College and Career Readiness Standards in Advanced ESOL. And then, of course, our goal is for them to, our students, for them to be better prepared for college and career readiness as they go on to their next step in their either educational career and what they see themselves doing or pursuing in the future. When we're looking and we're thinking about our programs, and as hopefully as educators you're reflecting through this whole PowerPoint and workshop, is to think about the possible pathways that our ESOL students can take. Of course, they go through the ESOL program, and then they go into the higher levels. Some of them might go into citizenship, wanting to acquire and become a citizen of this country. Some of them may go into the LCAT program, and then will as a bridge to get into a vocational program. Some of them may go into wanting to either get more, refine more of their skills in language and reading and math into an ABE program, or it could be that they want to pursue their GED if that's a need for them. Some of them, obviously, we know want to go into post-secondary ed and get a higher degree. So as we're thinking of our own ESOL programs and the ESOL students in our class, it's important for us as teachers to be aware what is asking them in some way, what is their goal? Is it can't be just to learn the English language. It has to be for preparation for something beyond that. And it is important for us as teachers and instructors to be aware of these possible pathways our students can take. So what does this mean for us as advanced ESOL teachers? Well, on the left-hand side, it means we have to really think about the content, what we're teaching in the classroom at the advanced ESOL level. Is it something that's going to, what can I do to start preparing myself or my students to be more college and career ready? Second bullet, we have to think about what strategies, what best practices we're using, what materials, be it our core material or our supplemental material, both in print and digitally. Are they things that are going to best help us, help our students and prepare them? These are some things we need to really look at our own school sites, in our own districts, to see, start asking, having those conversations with either vendors and seeing what they have in place already or what they will be having that will best help us, help our students. And then the last bullet on the left-hand side is there something we need to change in our program in our school side or as a district as far as an advanced ESOL? So that's something, these are things that we need to be reflecting upon. For our students, what does this mean? The college and career readiness standards and advanced ESOL. Well, it's important that your students know that they will be reading and expected to read more rigorous texts, that they'll be reading both not just literary but more informational, nonfiction texts, that they will be required to produce writing that they must support, that must be evidence-based, and that they need to, it is expected that they achieve higher order problem-solving skills. And that's something that we need to think about as teachers, also trying to infuse those problem-solving activities or opportunities in the classroom as well. So let's take a closer look at the standards. There are 4 academic strands, as I mentioned earlier: reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and language. There are 27 reading standards, 6 writing, 24 speaking and listening, and 4 language standards. And when we're talking about language, we're really looking at the grammar piece, but also the language piece. In addition to the college and career readiness standards, we also have the life and work skills. And if you look at the list, there has been a couple of additions. And as you will see, career planning is one of them, and technology. So as you can see, there's been some shift, and I'm sure there will be more coming out about any changes or revisions to the life and work skills in advanced ESOL. But for the purpose of this workshop, we're going to focus on the college and career readiness standards. So let's take a look at the reading standards first. There are 27 college and career readiness reading standards for advanced ESOL that include vocabulary and that require students to identify, look at these verbs, interpret, analyze, and evaluate. And so yes, the expectations for our students, as we've been mentioning, is to have those high critical thinking skills, and as teachers we need to be able to start thinking about or seeing what strategies or best practices or activities we're engaging our students in to help them to get to be able to interpret, analyze, and evaluate text. And this is a snapshot, what you see on the screen, from the curriculum framework that was mentioned earlier. So when we're thinking about the Advanced ESOL College and Career Readiness Standard, I pulled one out just to see, have us look at and reflect. Here's one, 6.01.23, which asks students to be able to analyze how a particular sentence, paragraph, chapter, or section fits into the overall structure of a text and contributes to the development of the ideas. Analyze the structure an author uses to organize a text, including how the major sections contribute to the whole and to the development of the ideas. So when we're thinking about just this reading standard, something we should be thinking about is, and reflecting, what we're just taking into account this standard. What will our ESOL students be expected to know when they read text? They have to really be able to read deeply and be able to pull specific information. Also, are your ESOL students currently prepared to demonstrate mastery of the above college and career readiness reading standard? And that's something for us as teachers to continuously reflect on as we go into a little bit more and examining these standards. I wanted to put a connection, and I wanted for teachers to see, once our students, as I mentioned earlier with the pathways, once our students leave our ESOL program, most likely they will move into the ABE program, or some of them may move into the ABE program. And there is a very similar standard in ABE that reads very similarly to the one in Advanced ESOL. And as you can see, the expectation is just as rigorous. And again, my question to you is, what will our ESOL students be expected to know if they enter an ABE program? So again, in the ABE, it's a little bit more specific as to the type of, when you read the anchor standard at the top in the light green, it talks about analyzing the structure of text, including how specific sentences, paragraphs, and larger portions of the text, such as a section, a chapter, a scene, or a stanza. So as you can see, it could be, there gives you a little bit more detail as to the type of text students may be reading, a scene from a play, a stanza from a poem, a section from a text. So it's a little bit more specific. So it's important for us as Advanced ESOL teachers to really look and see where our students might be heading and how well we need to be able to prepare them so that they are successful in their next step in their journey. So what does this mean for the Advanced ESOL classroom and the ABE classroom? Well, teachers, we're going to have to use closed reading strategies, and these are going to have to be taught to our students so they can be able to read and reread text so they can get to the main idea and a lot of the specific information that they will be required to understand and use when they write. We have to be able to engage our students in reading complex both nonfiction and fiction text. Of course, our students' reading skills we are going to have to really push that in the classroom and help our students, assist our students in, in complex thinking skills and critical thinking skills. And we have to think about, again, this goes back to what materials are we using, what best practices are we using, Is there something we need to adjust, or is there something that we need to look at? Closed reading obviously is going to be important. And again, our question to you is, what can we do to assist our ESOL students to be able to be successful in reading texts of complexity, such as the example you see on the slide, which is a speech by Winston Churchill. And this is a question that everyone has to ask back at their school side or at their district. Wanted to include a little bit about closed reading because some of us may know or may not know. So closed reading is thoughtful critical analysis of a text that focuses on significant details in order to develop a deep, precise understanding of the text's form, craft, and meanings. And it includes very short, brief passages. Most of the time it's an excerpt from a longer piece of work. Usually teachers do not give a lot of background knowledge or pre-reading activities when you do closed reading, because it's you do rereadings itself with the students. You focus specifically on the text. Of course, you reread deliberately. You have students reread deliberately for different purposes, or to read deeper. Usually you read it with a pencil because you mark up the text as you get into, each time you read, you mark up the text with questions or understandings. You also mark to see what areas or vocabulary may be confusing. You have an opportunity to discuss the text with students. And of course, you respond to questions that are specifically based on the reading of the text. This process, this strategy, is called closed reading with an S. Okay. So we're going to take a look at the College and Career Readiness Reading Crosswalk. And what it is, and you can get this right off the EPDA website, the handout. It is on the left-hand side, you have all the College and Career Readiness standards for Advanced ESOL and Reading. Then you have a column where it says, analyze what students would need to know to demonstrate mastery of the standard, and you will look at the standard itself and pull out the nouns in that standard. On the third column, you would analyze what students would need to do to demonstrate mastery of the standard, and there you would look at the verbs in the standard itself and pull it out. Then when you would reflect and look at the similarities or differences to the current curriculum that you currently are using in your classrooms or within your district. In the next column it says CCRS and AB reading. If there is a comparable standard in ABE reading, then it would be listed there. If it's not, then it's grayed out, and then you would reflect based on your analysis. And of course, if we were in a face-to-face situation, we would pair up and do this in pairs or in small groups, so that we can engage in conversation and discussion about these standards. But I provided an example. So for me, this was me. What I would, my students would need to know to demonstrate mastery. They would need to know the multiple meaning words, strategies, sentence level, context, affix, and root words. What would they need to do? They would need to be able to interpret and choose. What is the similarity or difference to my current curriculum? The materials I use and the texts I have my students read do not include multiple meaning words. So maybe here, as I transition into the use of college and career readiness standards, I have to be aware of that as a teacher and an instructor. And what is my reflection is I need to model for students how to use strategy to determine the meaning of unknown words. Obviously, because maybe the material that I'm using currently does not provide sufficient or doesn't provide those opportunities for my students at this time. So I would have gone through this, And this would have taken easily an amount of time, but this is something you can go and do back at your school sites, or hopefully in a PD at the district level, to really get into and start analyzing those changes, those shifts that maybe need to take place within your school sites and programs. So now let's take a look at the writing standards, and there are 6 writing standards for Advanced ESOL that will require students to write for a longer period of time, to use arguments to support a claim, and to use technology to produce writing. So again, just the last portion of technology, that's going to be also a shift, or maybe a conversation that needs to take place at the district level as to see how often are students engaged in digital literacy. That's a huge piece of the new standards. And of course, to produce writing, it's no longer just paper pencil, but being able to compose an email, to write a letter, to compose a resume, you know, because now we're in a digital age, so this is part of the new standards as well. So these are considerations we have to be thinking about. So when we're looking at the 6 standards, of course, like I said in the previous one, students are going to have to write for longer or shorter times, depending on the topic. They're going to need to know how to write an argument and support it. They're going to have to be able to know how to compose certain things, and the purpose for, writing. How would you write if you are writing to your, let's say, supervisor or your boss at work? The difference in tone, the difference in language, even the difference in style, as far as they need to know those things. And of course, the last bullet is very important, in which the last standard is using technology to produce writing as much and often as we can, to provide students with the opportunity to use the computer or a tablet to produce different forms of writing. And again, here is one of the standards: write arguments to support claims with clear reasons and relevant evidence. What will our ESOL students be expected to do when they write? Support claims, write arguments with clear reasons and relevant evidence. And this is a process. So what kind of writing do you currently engage your students in? So maybe reflecting on, what am I currently asking my students to write? Is it just a one-word response? Is it just, it has to be in complete sentences? Does it require them using the language or the vocabulary from the unit that they're studying in? Is it something, is it academic language like we talked about earlier in the slide, or is it more everyday language? So thinking about those different little things that can strengthen our programs and strengthen our instruction in the classroom are important. And again, I wanted to put an AB writing standard that is very comparable to the ESOL one. And again, what type of writing will your ESOL students be expected to produce if they enter an ABE program? And just like the ESOL standard above, if you look all the way to the right of the slide, it requires them, where it says 1.4, to write arguments to support clear claims and clear reasons and relevant evidence. So it's very, very similar to the expectations, and that's where we're headed with these new standards. Rigorous, critical thinking, higher expectations. And again, here's another writing crosswalk. The first writing standard is write routinely for longer and shorter times on a range of topics. Produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. So what would my students analyze? What students would need to know to demonstrate mastery of the standard? They would need to understand topics, writing, and how to organize their writing, style, what's the task, what's the purpose of my writing, and who am I writing for? Who's the audience? Analyze what students would need to do to demonstrate mastery of this standard, they would need to be able to write or produce this. Um, what are similarities or differences to the current curriculum that is being used? The text I utilize with my students does not provide writing prompts that assist my students in producing this type of writing. There is a ABE College and Career Readiness Standard in writing that is very similar to this standard in ESOL, where they have to produce clear and coherent writing in which the development, organization, and style are appropriate to task, purpose, and audience. So I know any of my ESOL students going into the ABE program will be held to this standard, and it's important for me to prepare them as best as possible. And then what's my reflection as a teacher? I need to model for my students how to organize and develop clear and coherent writing. And as we know, writing, like reading, is a process. So I need to, if I don't know something or I haven't really delved or engaged in writing a lot, then this is a reflection for me. Maybe I need to attend a PD. Maybe I need to do a book study on best practices in writing. These are just the little reflections that come about when I'm just leaving looking at this one standard. So these are the hopefully reflections that some of you are having or will have as you delve into these standards much more closely. So now that we've looked at the reading and the writing standards, what are some tools that can assist me or other adult ESOL students, teachers, moving forward? This is a great website. It's called newsela.com. It is great because it is free, number one. It provides a lot of different topics and text, nonfiction mostly, which is important for our students to be able to engage in reading. And it provides it at different levels. And it provides also feedback for teachers to see how often, how much reading the students are doing. They can do that in the classroom if you have computers available. They can do it in a lab setting. They can also do it at home. It provides a lot of opportunities for students to read at different levels. Here's the same, for example, same article at 2 different levels, reading levels, and of course the word counts, the length, and the vocabulary are completely different. Each article comes with 4 different questions, a little quiz at the end, which are in the language of the standards. It provides feedback to the student. You can also, it also provides an opportunity for the teacher to provide a prompt for students to get into habit of writing. So this is a great way to start moving into, transitioning into our students and ourselves into these higher expectations that they will ultimately be assessed on, and that will help them as they move forward into the next step in their journey. Another tool that I have personally used as a teacher is the use of writing frames. And when we have students who are not maybe confident writers or haven't written for a specific purpose, this is a good way to scaffold or support our students into writing. And here's a writing frame. There's a lot of different frames. It is a writing frame for to summarize an informational text. So if you're reading an article from a newspaper, or you're reading maybe one of the articles from the Newsela site, you could maybe have students practice in the article, the title, entitled blank, and then talk about maybe what the main idea, whatever it is that you want them to focus on. And it's a good way to have students begin using language, academic language, going back into the text and pulling details, which is what the standards require. The use of academic language, usually that comes from the text itself, or that they're learning through instruction in your classroom, and more formal type of writing. But these are wonderful, and I can't say enough about the use of writing frames in the classroom. And like it says on the slide, it's a way to scaffold instruction and build our students' confidence in writing. And it has many, many advantages for any student at any level. It is also evidence-based for teaching writing. We have to be aware of the strategies for planning, revising, and editing writing. Students have to be able to know how to do that. We have to show and model how to write summaries. Summaries are very difficult. We just can't ask a student to write a summary if we've never taught them the process of doing so. So a writing frame is another good way to ease into that. Also how to combine texts too, so that students are able to take two simple texts and make it into a more complex sentence. Having them use, clusters or webs or graphic organizers to help them gather their ideas before they begin to write, and showing them good models of writing, either from a book, a text, a novel, from articles in the newspaper, just good models of writing. And if you're interested in a lot more of that, you can go to that link that I've put on the website. Okay. So when we're talking about literary texts, we're talking about that students possibly would be having to read an excerpt from a story, a section from a story, historical fiction, mysteries, myth, science, a drama. It could be anything from a scene from a play or stanzas from a poem. When we're talking about informational texts, we're talking about they could be reading also sections from a speech or an essay or a biography, an editorial from a newspaper, just giving ideas of what we could be bringing into the classroom to expose our students to more informational text. The use of primary, secondary sources, such as the Declaration of Independence or the Gettysburg Address. And the third bullet really, when we're talking about social studies, science, math, and technical subjects, our CTE books. If our students are going to go into pursue a vocational program, if they're going into any of your CTE programs, it could be the text that students have to read in air conditioning, that they have to read if they want to go into the nursing program, if they want to go into manufacturing. Any of the books all of them are informational texts. That's what we can take samples from there as well. I can't say enough about the Update website. That's where you can find not only notes and any other related information related to this workshop, but it's constantly changing, and any webinars, workshops, handouts, toolkits are posted here. Any conferences that take place in our state that have anything to do with ESOL will be posted under there. So if you haven't logged in and created your username and password, please do so. It automatically sends you reminders when there is an upcoming webinar that you might be interested in, or for any of your colleagues who may or may not be in ESOL, that is a great way to stay connected and network with other adult educators across the state of Florida. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed our workshop. Please don't forget to look at part 2. It's also available on our Update website. Thank you so much.